Do you have a condo that you currently own and are planning on holding as a rental? Well, I have got a condo expert here with me, and we're going to talk through some of the 4 things that you need to know when you are keeping that condo and buying another house or a house. Maybe you want 2 houses. I don't know. It doesn't matter, but we're going to talk about the 4 things you got to make sure that you're looking into if you want to keep your condo as a rental instead of selling it right after this. Hey everybody, my name is Jared Chamberlain, and we are here in our office today talking about keeping your condo as a rental. And I am joined by Rebecca Hewitt.
Hello.
Rebecca, you run a condo inspection business. Is that how you want to word that?
I do. I'm the owner of Condo Savvy, and I do condominium document reviews for purchasers of condominiums.
Right. And we have used you. Clients have used you. It's been fantastic.
Yeah.
So thank you for what you do. And if you ever need help with that, you can always go to where I am Condo Savvy.
I am condosavvy.ca.
That's it. That is it. So today we want to talk about, there are 4 things that Rebecca and I were talking. And when you're keeping a condo as a rental, it can be kind of hard because there's certain things you want to go through in the process. And I don't think everyone goes through all of these things when they're keeping it because they're going to move up. Maybe they're getting married. Maybe they're just buying a house and keeping the condo. There could be lots of reasons for this.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, there's some things you want to check out. So we're going to jump right in. Number 1 is checking bylaws. So for those that don't know, what are bylaws? Let's just start simple.
So the bylaws are really the rules that govern the corporation.
Yes.
And underneath bylaws are policies. So sometimes bylaws might be silent in certain areas, and then policies are then built to address some of the issues. In terms of an owner wanting to rent out their unit, I think the first thing is to figure out what kind of rental do you want? Do you want a short-term rental like an Airbnb?
Yeah.
Or do you want long-term?
Well, and short-term rentals are so popular right now.
They are popular.
So many of our friends are like, hey, we're going to invest in like Airbnbs now. And I'm like, it's been around a long time, but it's crazy the craze that's come from it.
Yeah. And, oftentimes what I've seen is bylaws will either say no short-term rentals.
Yes.
Or they will say you can operate a business, but it has to have approval of the board. So what that means for Airbnbs, you can operate that. You need to get a license through the city of Calgary. Yep. But then the board might not approve it. Yeah. So figuring that out ahead of time can save you a lot of pain.
and expectations, because sometimes you think you're going one way and then all of a sudden, you get shut down. That's what you don't want to happen.
Absolutely.
And then you're backpedaling and trying to go to a long term because you wanted short term because cash flows were better.
Yes.
But it didn't turn into anything, right?
Yeah. So I think it's really good to just figure those expectations right at the very beginning.
Agreed.
Yeah.
No, that's good.
Yeah.
And I think the other part of that is what you can and can't do as the person living in that unit. So maybe you speak to that a little bit.
This is really, really important because unlike single family homes where you get to decide the rules where you live, this is a corporation. Yeah. And so they're the ones that have these rules for everyone to live by. And it's really to respect everyone's use and enjoyment, right?
Is that kind of like how we make rules for our kids?
Yes. Yes, exactly. Exactly. So, some of these rules maybe will be things like no smoking on common property, which maybe even includes a balcony.
Totally.
Things like no bicycles on a balcony.
That actually happens a lot.
It does happen a lot.
Yeah.
Or no personal items unless they're in actual use.
Or propane tanks.
Propane tanks.
I've seen that quite a bit too.
Yeah. I see a lot more bylaws where they're wanting electric or gas barbecues.
Right.
So.
And it's kind of awkward when they don't provide a gas hookup.
And then you'll need permission if you want to get a gas hookup. But,
That's right.
So I think making sure that you understand what those bylaws are, you understand the policies, and then whoever your tenant is going to be, they're provided with a copy of that They sign off on it, and they have a really good understanding of what is expected of them as a tenant.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
And I guess that kind of leads right into our second point, because what happens if there's a violation of bylaws? Because if you have that tenant in there and they get reported, something happens, it goes to the board, goes to the management company, what can happen, or what are some of the things that result from that if your tenant is not following what you set out, or what the board has set out and the management company has set out for them?
That's a great question. And typically, well, not typically, that is always addressed in the bylaws.
Oh, good.
How you handle that if there's a contravention. Sometimes it is monetary sanctions. And so, typically I would think that a board isn't going to fine right off the bat.
Yeah.
But say, for example, you have a tenant in there who has a pet and they're not cleaning up after them. Maybe the first time they're going to get a letter.
Yep.
The second time, maybe it will be a $50 fine.
So you got sent to your room, and then you got told no TV.
Exactly.
And then...
Yeah. And the challenge then, though, is that fine will go to the owner, not to the tenant.
It doesn't go to the tenant. And I was going to say, and that might be a good place to have something is in your tenant agreement. Now, I mean, whether it sticks or not, but you could have something in your tenant agreement that says if any fines come from the bylaws or the board or the management company of your activities, then, I mean, check with a lawyer, but there could be something you could do there.
Exactly. Yeah. And something really important for people to know is that when there's contravention of a policy, the board can't impose a monetary sanction for that. It's only for bylaws.
Interesting.
So, yeah.
Interesting. So what would be the difference in definition from your perspective of a policy versus a bylaw?
Bylaws are approved by owners.
Okay.
So essentially.
The board,
yeah. All the owners, if they want to change them. Policies are just approved by the board. So sometimes they're put in place just because, I don't know, the demographics of a condominium are different right now, and they want to address certain things.
Yeah.
I had a client, this was probably about a month ago, where they bought a condo.
Yeah.
In the bylaws, it allowed pets, but there was a policy that said no pets are permitted.
Oh, so what do you follow?
The policy.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Now,
why?
The great thing, though, is that the board can overturn that policy.
Because it also says pets allowed.
No, because they've put it in.
Oh, interesting.
They've put it in. So maybe down the road they say, you know what, this doesn't really make any sense anymore.
Yeah.
It only needs board approval, where a change in bylaws needs 75% of owners representing 7,500 of those 10,000 unit factors.
That's right.
So it's a different approval process. But sometimes they're just put in place to tighten up, where bylaws maybe are silent or really outdated.
Interesting.
Yeah.
There you go.
Who knew?
I didn't even know that. Well, you did.
So I always ask for policies when I'm collecting documents. Number one, because a buyer is entitled to them.
Yeah.
But because they can speak to things that maybe aren't in the bylaws.
That's a huge tip, actually.
Yeah.
So if you are keeping your condo, or even if you're gonna buy a condo for rental, ask for policies and as part of the condo document package that you're going to get. So that's really good.
Yeah.
So step number 3 is, who do you want the tenant to reach out to? So this might not necessarily fall into your bylaws and your condo stuff, but it's a really interesting topic and conversation, because you got to think proactively here. Do you want your tenant to be reaching out to the board or the management company for issues or problems, or should they be coming to you for that?
Yeah, that is something that I think really needs to be defined right up front.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, you might be a really trusting landlord and be like, no, I think you're awesome. I'm just going to trust you to run with it.
Yeah.
That's really a personal choice, I think. But I think setting that expectation right at the very beginning can kind of cause less harm down the road.
I think so.
Yeah.
And one of the other things that we've heard years ago and never implemented ourselves, but I wish we did when we had certain rentals, is to actually take a piece of paper and laminate it and put a contact list on it. And these are the approved people that the tenant can reach out directly. So it could be a plumber, it could be an electrician, could be whoever it is, but you set up something with those individuals or companies. And that way, if a toilet plugs, they can just call the plumber themselves. And I don't know why we never did it ourselves when we had rentals, or still do, but I don't know why we haven't done it. It just makes so much more sense, right?
Yeah, it's a beautiful idea. It's like as you would do for your kids if you're
That's
going
right.
out. Here's all the numbers that you
Here's
need
the
to call
emergency
just
list.
in case, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's a great idea. And even just identifying, do you want a professional management company to manage with your tenant, or do you want to take that on yourself?
Yeah. And I guess that we could circle back, because that could fall into potentially policies and bylaws in some ways. Like they may say you are or not allowed, or I don't know. I don't know if
I've
they
not
can.
ever seen that. I don't think so. Typically, though, you do have to, the tenant does have to sign a tenant undertaking form.
Okay.
And you do need to let the property management company know if you're renting out
That
your
they
unit.
are renting it.
Yeah, and who the occupants are. But,
Yeah.
some people like to be really hands off and want to just hand it over to a management
Yep.
company. And that's totally fair.
Yeah. And I guess at that point, it's really looking at the costs, what are the fees associated with that, and how is it going to work? And is your cash flow still there? Is it worth doing that? Or do you actually need to do it yourself?
Yeah,
To keep
absolutely.
the cash flows happening.
I mean, we have a rental condo and we have the best tenants.
Yeah.
We manage it ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they're amazing.
Yeah. That's good.
We're lucky.
You're lucky.
We're
It's good.
Yeah.
And so I guess the last one is, well, I guess we kind of already touched on it. Step 4 is approval from the board.
Yeah.
So maybe jump into that a little bit.
Yeah. Typically, things like pets, sometimes bylaws will say you can have one dog and one cat, and
Right.
it can't be any more than 30 pounds
Yeah.
or a certain height. So making sure
Yeah.
you get approval for a pet. Sometimes if you have a visitor and they're going to be there for longer than, 48 hours, you're going to need a parking pass for
Yeah.
it. And of course, any type of renovations typically need board approval.
Yeah,
I don't know
especially
that a
big ones.
tenant would be doing
Yeah.
any improvements.
No. Actually, that's a whole other video.
That's
on
a
its
whole
own.
other, and
Like,
I wouldn't even go there.
we have had what was it? We had someone who was a painter, and they're like, "Oh, I'm a painter. Can I paint the place?" And there was 4 owners, and 2 or 3 of the owners were like, "Yeah, absolutely, we'll pay for it." I'm like, "No, you
We're
cannot paint the place. I don't know what you're gonna do. I don't know how good or bad it's gonna be. How much is it gonna cost me to fix what you did?" But that's a different story.
Yeah, that's a great point. I hadn't actually even thought about that.
Yeah, not worth it.
Yeah,
Not worth
agreed.
it. I need to control certain things, and that's one of them.
Yeah,
is the paint on the walls.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, this is good. So again, the 4 things you really want to do is check the bylaws. Go into the bylaws, look for the type of rentals, your short-term, long-term, all that kind of stuff. You want to be looking at what happens if bylaws are violated or
Yep.
policies are violated. Who do you want your tenant reaching out to? The management company, the condo company, anything like that? And what approvals do you need from the board? And so those are 4 of the big things that I think if you are planning on keeping a condo as a rental because you are buying another house, this is something you really got to check into. So I want to,
Yeah.
Is there anything you want to add?
Just something I
Last
thought about
thought?
actually. So
Yeah.
sometimes the bylaws will say that a member of the board doesn't have to be an owner.
Oh, interesting.
So if you want to be on the board, you want your unit represented, you want to have, eyes and ears of what's going on, and you have this phenomenal tenant.
Yeah.
And if the
Or a
bylaws
long-term tenant.
Yeah, and if the bylaws allow, they could sit on the board.
Interesting.
Yeah. It's a great way to help shape your community,
Yeah.
I think, and then really know what's going on.
And hopefully it doesn't backfire on you.
Hopefully it doesn't backfire.
Well, this has been great. Well, thank you
Yeah.
so much for joining us, Rebecca.
Thank you for having me.
I appreciate this. And yeah, if you have any other questions, you can always reach out to Rebecca. I am condosavvy.ca is where she's at. And that's what we have for today. So keep your condos, have fun, buy a new house, move on up, and live life and have fun. All right, we'll see you guys later.